Hello, this is the LAN show. LAN? Just the LAN. And we've got a couple of new people. Well, one new person here today. So I'll do some introductions. I'm Caveman the One. I'm also known as Nick Caven. I'm a part of the AMD Red Team Plus and also really active on the Level 1 Tech forums. Kudu, do you want to go next?
Yeah, Cool007. I'm on the internet in random places as Cool007. This week I'm not wearing the red hat. No, this week I'm Santa Claus. That's all I got to say because I'm not really much anything else special.
Okay, Tracer?
I am Tracer on Level 1 Tech Forums. I'm known as Wolf Lapin and other places. On the forums, I'm fairly active. I do investigative research into various topics. I also investigate legal issues in the tech field and very active in that area.
Okay, Osiris?
I'm Osiris. I'm a roboticist by trade. Recent job as a robot pilot for a number of years, and now I'm the founder of Triad.
Okay, so
You mean Triclops?
No, Triad LLC is our official name. Triclops is just a channel.
Ah.
Okay, so this week we have a variety of topics that we're going over. So, let's see, a Yahoo hack with something like 1 billion users. Some
And I'm one of
information
them. They
on.
sent me emails regarding that.
Yep. And then some information on the Ryzen CPU, a bunch of legal stuff from Tracer, and then what happened to Command and Conquer, also by Tracer, and then a variety of other topics, and one in particular that's interesting, which is rare earth mining that Jajon and Kulid are going to be going over if Jajon shows up at some point in the future, and then some other topics after the show like the 1080 Ti and yeah, so let's start off with the Yahoo hack, which about 1 billion user accounts were hacked in this latest breach. And apparently it happened 3 years ago, which the fact that they're only telling us now says a lot about the company.
Yeah, priorities are not that high. When you look at responsibility when it comes to accounts being compromised, Yahoo was definitely behind the ball on this. Adobe, when they got hacked, and there was, that big news story about it. They sent out emails immediately, and they said you're gonna have to reset your passwords now. They didn't wait. There was no waiting for them. But with Yahoo, it wasn't that case. It just shows they really do not care about the people. They only care about their money and their greed.
Yep, pretty much. Okay, so
How many Yahoo accounts do you think are still active?
I have two.
yeah,
I saw a banner image for Yahoo a while back that had about 10 people that were like very casually dressed, and the caption for it was the 10 remaining Yahoo users.
yeah, I just have mine because I had mine in like 2006 when I originally made it, and I just haven't gotten rid of it.
My entire family uses Yahoo.
My problem with Yahoo, man, was just the enormous amount of spam. It was just like they had sold my account or something because I never signed up for anything.
Yeah, the spam on there was pretty bad. Of course, I've gotten away from even Gmail. I'm primarily using Proton Mail now.
Yep. So if no one else has any thoughts, then we can move on to the AMD's Ryzen, which is a really interesting event with the new horizons, and 8 core, 16 thread, 3.4 gigahertz plus, 20 megabytes of cache, and a variety of new technologies. So, yeah, I was actually at that event and got to take a closer look at a lot of the systems that they had running, and it was really interesting. I also got to meet Dr. Lisa Su, so, which makes the edit of that on the forum annoys me, but still. So
would you anything stand out to you at the Ryzen event?
I'd say the fact that AMD is focusing on the gamer now more than ever, because they really want consumers to be happy with their products. So they're doing a lot of stuff that are focused on gamers and enthusiasts.
Yeah, that's one thing I did like about that. It for a while, for the last couple of years, it did feel like AMD has kind of left the community as a whole kind of hanging. And then now suddenly we have this, and it feels like we're finally being reached out to, and it feels like this is a right step in the direction. And I'm fairly excited for Ryzen and the potential it could have on for video editing and for photography and the Adobe suite as a whole. Because depending on the price, it could potentially be a game changer when it comes to those type of productivity suites and in game developing. I mean, if they price it right, oh my gosh, it would be amazing.
For once, people would be actually needing to use more than 2 cores for games.
Yes.
Yeah. The other one that caught my interest is the extended frequency range, which, if they do it right, could be really awesome. Because it's auto overclocking, sorta like Turbo Boost. So, just something that caught my eye.
Yeah, something I kind of felt was a little insane on AMD's end is like, yeah, we all know who AMD is, we all know what they do, but realistically, if you go to any of these conventions and things like that, I've never felt like a heartfelt welcome from AMD. You know, they never are on the floor, they're never sending people out, they're never doing things like that. I was at DreamHack last year with NVIDIA, and the thing about that was is that I got invited out to some Twitch parties. You know, some of the Twitch streamers had got some Airbnbs, and they ended up just buying a bunch of liquor and stuff, and threw a party out of these Airbnbs, and it was kind of fun. It was pretty cool, and what's interesting about it was NVIDIA reps were there. It was just like a house party where people were getting smashed and whatnot, but there was NVIDIA reps there. They were mingling. They weren't talking shop. They weren't talking business, but you know, it, it was just their presence was there, and that kind of changed the dynamic of the mood because you feel a little more one-on-one with people whenever you do get to see them in a setting that has absolutely nothing to do with what their job is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kulu, do you have any thoughts on this? On the Zen?
All I can do is wait. I mean, I'm probably not going to do anything. Actually, no, I'm just not going to do anything because I have a 4790K and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, I'm excited for AMD. They can get back on the market if it's at a less than Intel price. The 6800K it was compared to or whatever, isn't that like $1,000?
1,100.
Yeah, 1,100.
Yeah. Any amount less than that, it's a winner. That's all I really have to add to it.
Also, modern motherboard support with AMD would be pretty sweet. USB 3.1 and all that.
Yep.
There isn't really much more to go on until, it actually happens. And third-party benchmarks and whatever, all the other listed shit you're supposed to say before it actually comes out.
Mm-hmm. So, now we move on to Tracer's topics with the legal cases.
All right, so got a couple different things to cover. Basically, really two big legal things, but one of them I broke down a little more. The first one being is there's an important court case going on in California that it's BMG versus Cox Communications. And this particular case could potentially set a very dangerous legal precedent. What the music industry wants is they want to be able to send a DMCA to the internet provider saying, hey, here's this person IP address, shut off their internet altogether. That is what they want. That is what they're arguing for in this case. And it's before the Court of Appeals in California right now. So this is an important case to watch to see what the courts are going to decide. It's probably going to go potentially all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, the reason this is very, very important case is because that potential to shut down someone's internet over one illegal download, and it could potentially be a false flag download as well off your IP address, is so dangerous, and it just boggles my mind that they're even considering it and even arguing it. The interesting thing when it comes to IP addresses in the court system, it's actually been argued you cannot actually use the IP address to actually indict someone or saying they're doing something illegal just by their IP address alone. They've actually set that legal precedent already. That's been established. So this is an important court case to watch right now. It's going to be a few years before anything is really decided, but it is something I'm keeping my eye on. I just want to bring everyone's attention to this. This is something that could be very disastrous. It's allowed to stand and go forth. Right now, what's protecting the ISPs is called safe harbor laws. Safe harbor law basically means the internet service providers are not in trouble when their users do something illegal on it. They're not responsible for that. They don't have to do anything to their users. That's what the safe harbor laws establish. Now there's a three-struct system where they'll eventually get fined for something, but that's something completely different. So right now the music people are like, we want to get around safe harbor, and basically saying internet has to be shut down when they do something illegal downloading our stuff. So yeah, I just want to bring everyone's attention to this. It could be very dangerous, and it kind of terrifies me to a great degree.
Something to consider there is that the internet has been classified as a resource.
Yes.
So because it's been classified as a resource, I doubt that they have the right. You can't shut off somebody's water because they're making meth. You know what I mean? It doesn't work like that. You cannot turn off people's resources because they're using them for ill intent. Just like a landlord can't evict you for not paying rent in a certain extent. Like, they can't take it into their own hands. They have to go through the court of law. They can't just go, oh, well, he didn't pay rent, and rent is part of water, so I'm going to shut off his water. You can't do that. So yeah. With that being said, they're not... There's just a certain level of protection on resources for people that I don't see anything becoming of that.
Yeah. You make a definitely good point there. Net neutrality basically plays into that role as well. We're basically saying it's a utility. So yeah. It's something to watch for. All right, on to the next thing. So this one is fairly important. A Florida court denied protection for an iPhone passcode. So first, when this was being brought up in the news, it was that a lot of people were screaming Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. This is self-incrimination, yada, yada, yada. And so I'm like, I need to really look into this case and see what the whole context is before I can actually say, okay, is this something that will fall under self-incrimination or not? So first, let's go over a couple of things before we get into what this case is. First, let's actually go over what the Fifth Amendment actually says. So the Fifth Amendment actually says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject to the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So the part we're focusing on here in the Fifth Amendment is nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. So that's a key thing to keep in mind while we're discussing this. Next, we have to look at what is the actual test for self-incrimination. When it comes to the legal system and in cases, there are actually tests established by usually the Supreme Court. Once it gets high enough, they set a test saying it has to do X, Y, and Z for it to mean this. So, in a thing I found online, self-incrimination and the likelihood of prosecution test on page 672 in the first paragraph, it talks about the two considerations for this test. And it says, first, whether the witness response might indict his participation in criminal activities, and second, if these answers tend to indicate such participation, whether they could expose the witness to the possibility of persecution. So those are the two tests for self-incrimination. Basically, response were basically that show that yes, he was doing something illegal. And second, if the answers indicate that he was doing that, so they're kind of almost the same. All right. So what is this court case about? This guy was accused of voyeurism, where basically he was caught on CCTV footage, potentially taking a picture or video with his phone of a woman. He actually agreed to allow the police to search his phone at first while he was on scene. But then when they came to get it, he said, no, you can't search it. He withdrew his consent. The next thing is that the court actually went and obtained a warrant to search the phone, but he wouldn't provide the passcode for it, claiming, it would self-incriminate him. Now, the courts have argued that it's not self-incrimination with the code itself, using a strong box argument. And the article actually linked, it actually talks about that. In the article, it says, in the U.S. Supreme Court's 1988 Doe versus USA decision, Justice John Paul Stevens wrote a since much repeated line saying that an accused person may be forced to surrender a key to a strong box containing incriminating documents, but cannot be compelled to reveal a combination to his wall safe. So the problem with this argument, and the problem I have with it, is the fact that this is from 1988, and it wasn't really spoken with in mind to a digital age. Think about how much access you have in a phone. What is actually on the phone? Your GPS history is on your phone. Your internet history is on your phone. Your calendars, your contacts, phone numbers, pictures, Facebook activities, your buying history, potential credit card history. All this information is potentially on your phone itself. So I can see from a technical standpoint that yes, the court on a technical standpoint is kind of right, technically speaking, but it is a very dangerous technical thing. The other thing is that the court could have sent this phone into Apple saying, hey, can you unlock this for us? They didn't do that. They didn't do that. They could have, but they didn't.
Didn't work out so well the last time that happened.
Yeah. Well, this is something kind of a little different. That case, the one you're talking about, where it was, having a backdoor to go into any iPhone. This is more of, we just need the PIN code for this. A little different, but kind of similar. But this case is going to be interesting just to watch to see what's going to happen. The lower courts basically ruled, yes, we agree with what this guy's saying. It's self-incrimination. But the Court of Appeals overturned it, and now it's going forward. So this case could potentially go all the way to the Supreme Court level. Potentially. I actually don't know. It takes a while before these cases get to Supreme Court level. You might be wondering how long. It can take a decade. It can take 7 years. It depends on the case. It depends on the amount of money spent. So this is one of those other important cases. But yeah, it's very interesting, guys. Does anyone have any questions about this case in general?
The question for me is that, is he pretty much guilty? Is it, without the
Without the phone.
Yeah, I mean, what do they have on him so far? They have CCTV of him doing what?
They have a CCTV video of him potentially taking a video or a picture with his phone. They have the statement from the actual person that he was doing this to. So they do have
taking a video of a person. What do you mean by that? You got to be a little more specific.
Basically, let's see. Like potentially taking, like, they don't know if he took a picture or if it was a video. They just saw his phone was lighted up from the backside, like he was either taking a picture or a video. They actually don't know if it was either or. So
taking a picture or video of people is not illegal.
To a certain extent, yes.
It's been argued in court before that they've had people come up to women who are wearing skirts and take pictures of their skirt, and that has been found not to be against the law because they're wearing clothing, and they're fully clothed by the extent of law. So it's creepy and it's frowned upon, but it's nothing you can actually go to court over.
Yeah. In this case, he was arrested after a woman who was shopping in a store saw him crouched down, extended an illuminated cell phone under her skirt, according to the court records. So,
but this has already been tried before, so it's kind of odd to me that this is such a big deal. I think the main reason it's a big deal is basically because he's not willing to give up the passcode, because this has happened in the past on buses and things like that. There's creepers everywhere, and every time it always gets thrown out under the extent. They've even argued, because they've had a few women who weren't wearing anything under their skirts get really upset about it, and the judge was like, well, you can take pictures of people. The right to press is a thing. And if you walked out of your house without clothing and someone took a photo, that's not anybody else's fault but your own.
Yeah.
Do I think it's ultimately creepy and there should be something against it? Yeah. But I mean, really try to punishing somebody for laws that don't yet exist is kind of extreme.
Yeah, I agree with you there. This is definitely one of those in a public circumstance. This is a store. It's in the public. You could really potentially take a picture of anyone in any store or out in the public. Now, if it was in her own home, that would be a different story altogether.
Correct. I agree.
But yeah. It's like you said, the only reason this court case is big is because he's not giving out his passcode. That's the only reason It's a big case. Otherwise, it would have just been like thrown out.
And my thing about giving up a passcode and evidence that's on cell phones that I have an issue with is that you don't have any context to any data that's on the phone. You just have data.
Right.
You know, you take it as you see it. And the problem with that to me is you can misconstrue things a lot, because a legal document is one thing because the setting is very clear, the wording is very exact, and people who went to school for a very long time, you know, to draw that paperwork up, drew it up. But as far as data that's out of context on a cell phone, I guarantee every one of us on our cell phone has something stupid that can be held against us for absolutely no reason other than the fact that people would have no idea what it means. You know?
Yep.
So I understand why he wouldn't want to give that up anyway.
Yeah. All right.
You forgot the Command and Conquer.
Yeah,
I
I was
said that.
coming back to that. I figure I get the two boring things out of the way first. Kind of. All right, so Command and Conquer. Command and Conquer is a series I grew up actually playing. It was actually the first PC game I actually played. And I was actually part of a group of gamers that actually got to alpha test the next Command and Conquer way back in 2000. I can't even remember when it was. I want to say it was like 2006 or 13. Yeah, 2013. Anyways, so what happened Command and Conquer? So this alpha that I actually played, it was kind of like Command and Conquer Generals in a lot of ways. You had a general, you commanded a unit. The thing is, it also was the EA of the time. So you want to talk about paid for DLC that was atrocious? Holy crap. It was atrocious for this. They were like charging like $3 or $4 for a general if you wanted to buy them, if I'm remembering correctly. So basically, you pay to use a general. Can you imagine that? Oh gosh. The other thing is, it was kind of similar in a way to the way StarCraft 2 played. Basically, you build a base, and then when you added to the base. So it was very similar to StarCraft 2 as far as that mechanic worked. The units were a little different, and stuff was a little different, but that part was kind of similar, which was a little weird. I gotta lie. But the problem that we had as the alpha testers, as one of the things they told us early on was, we are not going to have single player. And then they're like, well, we are going to have it, and it'll be paid for DLC and mission packs. And the players basically said, no, we are not going to abide that. Like, basically screaming bloody murder on the official alpha forums. We were not happy with it. We also talked about, here's what's wrong with this game. Here are the issues we have with it. Here's what you can do to make it better. Like, they were talking to veteran players, and they were not listening to us at all. Because what we wanted was, the original Command and Conquer. We love generals, don't get us wrong. We love generals, but we wanted a true Command and Conquer, because Command and Conquer 3 was a disaster. We wanted something like Tiberian Sun again. And we wanted, the old school nod and whatnot, GDI. We wanted those back. That's what we wanted. We wanted that. We wanted a single-player campaign. We wanted it to be cheesy, and all the things that Command & Conquer was known for. But they didn't listen to us. And in the end, Victoria Games, the people that were making it, were ultimately shut down. And I read several different reports on what their employers said. The employers actually said the reason that they were shut down was actually a little different than what the press said. And I found out more about the history behind the Command & Conquer Alpha. Here's where it gets interesting. The Command & Conquer Alpha was actually based off of a spin-off of Command & Conquer Generals 3, which no one really liked. It was buggy. Yeah, there was a story in there that was kind of okay, but the thing was, this spinoff was basically multiplayer only, free to play, paid for DLC, all this other stuff. So that's what they were told to do, and they were going to call it Command and Conquer 4, but it wouldn't have a single player. And then in the end, got canceled, got shut down, and it's likely we will never ever see another Command and Conquer game from EA ever. I don't ever see it happening with EA right now. It could happen, but the thing is, the people who made it, Westwood Studios, they went off and they did something else. They did Grey Goo. A lot of them went off and made Grey Goo. It was decent. But anyways, that's what happened with Command and Conquer.
Yeah, Westwood was probably my favorite game company of all time. They created Nox, and I was pretty upset when that didn't continue. EA bought them out and kind of screwed everybody up, as EA likes to do. Huge shame. Command and Conquer and Nox, definitely my first gaming memories there, besides Diablo.
Yep.
Okay, let's see. We got the Consumer Review Fairness Act.
Yeah, that's a very little blip. Actually, it was the one that put that up there. So this was something that basically Congress passed, but it had been signed into law, so I didn't want to bring it up till it was signed into law. So what this does is, when a reviewer now posts online, they don't have to worry about the people who make that product suing them. That's what this Fairness Act does. It protects the reviewers from being sued by the people who make the product.
That sounds pretty cool, actually.
Yep. So they can be critical and not have to worry about being sued.
Yeah, but it's also kind of slippery there. I mean,
Yeah.
journalists are paid for, and I gotta say, I wouldn't put it past a lot of larger companies to do what they could to shut down smaller companies by going for journalists with a lack thereof integrity, as it were.
Yeah. You're seeing that kind of with how Bethesda is handling their review copies now with their policies. They're allowing, no offense to people who do YouTube streaming, but they gave copies of the latest Elder Scrolls Remastered to a lot of YouTubers way before reviewers even got it. So they're getting this positive stuff from their YouTubers who don't know they're being played by Bethesda for this. So yeah, you definitely kind of see hints of it already kind of happening now.
Yeah, but in all fairness, a lot of reviews, it kind of is lame, but since like IGN a long time ago have been heavily paid for, and if you didn't pay a lot of money for your review, you were going to get a bad review. There was a lot of games I really enjoyed, like Armored Core, and for EGM had a great review for Armored Core 3 and Silent Line. Then IGN, of course, wasn't paid off by From Software, and they had like a one paragraph review called and for Armored Core Silent Line, and it said something stupid like "white robots can't dance" or something, and it was just ridiculous. And at the time, you could just see all the AAA titles that were from these mainstream companies like EA were just getting these enormously like just total shill-esque reviews, and I don't know. Like for me, the whole review scene has been kind of tampered for a long time. Now, my argument for Bethesda is just one of which that is, there's people like Total Biscuit who are kind of mad that they didn't get like a review copy of Doom, and for me, it was like, why are you mad? You're not getting free stuff, I mean, you're not entitled to anything more than anybody else, and if they don't want to send out review copies and have you taint everyone's opinion of the game and let people form their own opinion, well, that's their business, But yeah, I'm definitely glad to see some kind of protection rolling out, like the DMCA takedowns on YouTube videos and things like that is kind of ridiculous. And hopefully this will kind of put Nintendo in check because they're notorious for if you review one of their games and they don't like it, they just start spamming you with DMCA's, which I don't think is appropriate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there.
Okay, let's see. We have the rare earth topic now. Cool dude.
Oh boy, where again? This whole topic is really based off of one article that DeJohn found from it's from 2015. I mean, it's still relevant today, but just so you know, this article is already a little dated. But essentially, it's about America and why we aren't really big in the rare earth metal business. And there's one main answer, and it's China. But all jokes aside, the whole point is back to why a lot of shit's made in China. They can do it cheaper. But this also has another effect on it, is that China has the biggest market share in the world. I think this the smallest number they had in here was 86%. Late 2000s late 2000s, it was up there in the 90s of percent of market control. But now it's gone down that we have Australia and other countries like Africa, countries in Africa and Canada and whatnot. But the whole part of basis of this is someone was watching 60 Minutes and they had some really in-depth thing about why America isn't doing anything, and we have like 4 active mines for rare earth metals in America now, and it's dwindling still because we just straight up can't do it cheap enough. And for those of you that don't know what rare earth is, lithium is probably the big name that you're going to recognize, like phone batteries. Magnesium for some laptop cases. Lead is one? I didn't know that.
Yeah, but I mean, that same practice can really be said about most things we can't compete with China with.
Yeah.
Just manufacturing in general, we can't. There's just not much we can do about it. I mean, we lose out to a lot of countries on manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that's kind of a not fair statement. And this is, don't mean to kind of get preachy on this, but this is why I kind of have an issue with NAFTA. And that's because it cost other people in other countries dollars a day to live, as opposed to it cost us around $100 a day to live. We have exponentially more bottom line than they do. So for us to try to compete with someone who has exponentially less bottom line on a global scale, that didn't seem to really put us in an advantageous position, if you ask me.
Yeah. One of the key points or key things to keep going back and pointing to this article is a company named Molycorp. Their shares were $75 a piece. They're now like 43 cents because prices collapsed that much from the 2000s. And they're starting to default on their loans. They're probably going to shut down later. Man, this is depressing.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I don't know if you guys ever follow any kind of thing that goes with any kind of exportation of jobs, anything like that, but it pretty much has been going like that for a while now, and we're really starting to see that snowball roll down that hill now.
Yeah. They did suggest in this article that possibly deregulate and subsidize, like we've done with other industries like solar and nuclear and whatnot.
Yeah, it just seems like it's almost safer to not compete than it would be to give every single company out there an enormous amount of tax breaks to try to justify them staying here.
Yeah, because we have enough other countries competing right now that China doesn't have a global monopoly like they did in the early 2000s, where they could jack up prices by 2,000%.
Right.
Yep.
And me personally, being an industrialized specialist, I advocate us having as much manufacturing here as we can. There's no reason not to.
And speaking of rare earth metal mining, 1080 Ti.
That transition, though.
It's related.
Sort of. But yeah, 1080 Ti, and it showed up through, I forget where it was. I think Tracer knows more, but they were hiring people, and somehow it showed up through that.
Yeah, basically job listing for a position. And this person markets the 1080 as 1080 Ti as a replacement for a 980 Ti, and they're going to have a step-up program for those users. And,
I have an ATI. How much is it going to cost me?
no idea. A lot.
It sounds
My
like
guess.
they're copying a certain other company that makes phones.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like, what's it? Apple?
Yes.
Some phone providers do that where you can constantly have the current iPhone.
Yeah.
And doesn't specifically EVGA have a program for that?
Yes, they do. It's a 3-year program.
Nice. It'd be sweet to see that on a actual chip manufacturer level, though.
There's not really much to go on this article. They got, of course, underneath the picture it says fake 1080 Ti image, and it has a hypothetical spec sheet. This is the same shit we've been seeing since graphics cards in Memorial have been a thing. Just it's a little leak. Someone said a thing. Here's a spec sheet, which is probably correct. Most of the time, it's correct, and it still says hypothetical. And it shows an image of a 1080 little Ti on the end. That's probably exactly what it's gonna look like, unless they make it black, which I don't know why they would do that.
Why not?
Just
Always
like,
love
Hey, next is black.
Anodized.
You don't have
insane.
2 black cards. It's breaking the rules.
This is NVIDIA we're talking about.
I don't know.
They don't play by the rules.
To either have 10 gigabytes of GDDR5X or what?
I feel like they're gonna have 12 gigs of GDDR5.
Yeah, that sounds more.
Well, the Titan X already has 12 gigs of GDDR5X. I mean, there's not really a point in having 2 12 gigabyte cards.
I feel like that slight difference in memory would be enough and cut down cores. I mean, there's already only a 10% difference between the 1080 and the Titan X, so...
Yeah, it's going to be exactly the same as Maxwell was. Overclock 980 Ti beats Titan X. Overclocked 1080 Ti beats Titan X Pascal.
Does anyone else think NVIDIA created the Titan just to have something to beat?
Oh, of course.
I mean, I was just not trying to be rude or nothing. Just throwing
But
that
this
out there.
time, the Ti will probably be $1,000 because the Titan X is above that.
Yeah, I think they're getting a little big for their britches personally.
Somewhere between.
When I was at the 1080 launch, man, I kind of gave the engineers there a hard time, and so did these Russian guys. It was pretty brutal. It's like a Shark Tank in there. They released the Founders Edition card, and they were like, "Yeah, so this is what ours is going to cost." And I was like, "All right, well, why is there 2 separate prices?" And they were like, "Oh, well, this is just for the Founders Edition." I was like, "Okay, but why? From your perspective, why did you think it was appropriate to release 2 prices?" And the guy was like, "Well, you know, we don't have our own factory to create graphics cards, so we're always having to rent factory space to make these, and that's why they're always limited run. But a lot of companies out there don't want gamer-centric cards. You know, they're building workstations or things like that, and you know, where they just need GPU power, but not necessarily, you know, the Quadro stuff, and they're demanding these cards." And I was like, "Okay, so you couldn't just outsource the work to somebody else to create that?" And anyway, long story short, that was the guy's excuse, was it was just cost. They were losing money on those cards because they were having to rent factory space. And I asked him, I was like, "Well,
thing where you charge businesses more for things."
Right. And this is where I had an issue with him because from a industrial perspective, that totally made sense to me. But in the same note, I asked him, I was like, well, isn't this just going to be an excuse or a gateway for graphics cards manufacturers to charge on the high end because now the reference design is this, and you have pretty much given them the go ahead with this to charge that much? And he's like, no, MSRP is going to be this. I was like, MSRP doesn't matter. I was like, what's going to matter is
Yep.
they're going to compete with your pricing directly because this is what the reference cards go for, and they believe their cards are more expensive. So, the guy, he didn't really want to agree with me on it, and here we are almost a year later, and I was totally right on the money on the spot.
Mhm. Okay, so that's the end of our topics here. If anyone has anything to talk about on top of these, like if you want to go over anything, Osiris.
I don't know. I mean, you guys got any questions for me?
I don't know, just a general question. How about Christmas hype? Anyone ready?
No.
Oh. Well, what's got you down in the dumps?
Well, nothing really. It's just Christmas is always a weird time of year for me because I'm like, hey, Christmas is happening. Okay, move on.
Wow. That's such a long and detailed story about why you don't like Christmas.
It's not that I don't like it. It's the fact that I'm kind of nonchalant about celebrating it.
You're just meh.
Yeah, I'm pretty much meh. I mean, I understand why it's important. I actually, when Christmas happens, on that day, I watch A Christmas Carol with Patrick Stewart, and I watch an episode of The Twilight Zone that's about Christmas, and that's my Christmas.
That's not terrible.
No, it's a good way to spend Christmas for me. I mean, Patrick Stewart as Scrooge is really good.
Yeah. for
Anyone
me-
else? Christmas hype? Come on. It's Christmas, goddamn it happens once a year.
Well,
Did anyone?
my direct family is in Europe, so there's that. And then
For what reason?
my mom, dad, and sister are in France and a bunch of other places in Europe. And they said, if you want to go with, you have to pay your way. And I was like, that's a lot of money that I don't have.
So you guys stuck to Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst thing ever. I have the whole house for a couple of weeks, so.
No, how'd that overclocking at 0 degrees work out?
It actually worked out really well. And I was able to push like 1.8 volts through the CPU and not have it blow up, which was quite fun.
What'd you get finally stable?
I got 5.3 gigahertz on all 8 cores, sort of stable in benchmarks. I would have gone for 6 or 7 gigahertz on one core, but I only figured out how to do that after I was done, so.
Maybe there'll be a round 2 eventually.
I mean, I could, it's just, do I want to drag all that stuff outside again?
Yes, you do.
Now, I was worried that the red team was going to become the blue team if you stayed out there any longer.
Yeah, we were going about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when my hands were kind of cold and I wasn't too worried about that, but when my feet started getting really cold, I was like, nope, can't do it.
Need your feet more than your hands.
Well, if my feet get cold, it's really hard to warm them back up. My hands
Yes.
are kind of easy.
Just get some of that heating phase change material instead of the cooling stuff. It'd be good.
Yep.
We were in the chat of that live stream. Now you need to get your phase change machine and use that at 0 degrees.
I'm not even sure if that would do anything.
I mean, is that affected by ambient temperatures? Because I mean, it still has to feed air through a radiator.
Kind of, but not really.
Well, I mean, you'd get efficiency in the 0 degrees even from that, even if you're using phase change, because your VRMs, your power supply, and everything else isn't being cooled off.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you gotta remember the more heat, the more resistance in your power supply.
Yeah.
It's a law of physics people always seem to forget.
Also, the fact that it's 990 effects in the VRMs, they get toasty after you put a lot of
Yep.
volts through them.
I just run it stock and they get toasty.
I thought it was an 8370. Oh wait, well, I just thought you said 9590. Never mind.
990, even on the Sabertooth R3, which is badass, they still get toasty. So,
Yeah, you run them at 2 volts, that'll happen.
yeah, that's true. Although when it's 0 degrees outside, then it doesn't matter anyway. But if it's normal temps, yeah, it kind of matters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all, folks.
Okay.
Hour-long show. Or was it?
It'll be an hour long in about 5 minutes, but I'll stop it now. So, bye everyone who's watching, which is 3 people.